Welcome to the Property Buyer Podcast, where we explore the world of residential and commercial real estate to help you make better decisions about buying, selling, or investing in all types of property. Join me, Rich Harvey, CEO of Propertybuyer.com.au and multi-award-winning buyer's advocate. Our podcast features expert interviews, market trends and insights, and practical tips for navigating the complex world of Australian real estate. Whether you're a home buyer, a seasoned property investor, commercial buyer, developer, or simply curious about the property market, our podcast is for you. Join us as we share our knowledge, strategies, and experience and help you achieve your property goals.
Well, welcome again to another edition of the Property Buyer Podcast. My name is Rich Harvey and I'm here with Joey DeGata today to talk about the game plan for building a whole property portfolio. Welcome, Joey.
Thanks so much, Rich. Absolute pleasure to be on the pod. We are sitting down with one of Australia's leading buyer's agents, one of the most experienced buyer's agents in the country. It is an absolute privilege to be sitting down. And I've been watching your stuff for such a long time. I'm sitting down with the one and only Rich Harvey. Rich, honour to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Mate, there's so much I want to unpack, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get an absolute wealth of knowledge out of this podcast, and I'm sure every listener of the podcast knows who you are, but do you mind just giving us a little bit of a rundown, who you are, how long you've been doing this for, where you're coming to us from? Obviously, like I mentioned, you're a BA there, sure. But just the quick little spiel.
Sure, I'd love to. So I've been running my business for 25 years now. I was one of the first buyer's agents in Australia. There's like 3 or 4 of us when I first started back in 2001. And the reason I started a buyer's agency was that there was no one else giving independent advice when it came to buying a property. I went out there, my wife and I wanted to build a nest egg for our family. So I went to all these financial planners and all they were doing was selling off the plan crap, getting huge kickbacks and not disclosing the fees and in, really bad areas. So I thought, this is ridiculous. I went to 10 financial planners, couldn't get any advice. So I thought, here's a niche. So my background is, grew up in Sydney. I studied economics, did a double degree, did a master's, worked in government for 10 years as a senior economist trying to save the world. I was actually a bit of a greenie back in the day.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So I wanted to get into environmental economics. I almost got a job with World Vision in third world countries developing how to help improve their economies.
Incredible.
But anyway, I worked in government and got a bit sick of doing cost benefit analysis every day. So I started investing in property on the side as a side hustle. So I wanted my wife to, when we had kids, to kind of not have to feel the pressure of working, and thought, how can we build a nest egg? So I would read one book a week on the train. Yep. This was the time before realestate.com, right before the internet. Like I would read a book a week to educate myself. Went to lots of seminars. I spent a fortune on my own education. So there's a tip for your listeners right there.
Wonderful.
Educate yourself straight away. Whatever method. These days you've got so many podcasts like this. It's almost too much, right? So I'd educate myself and I started buying property and ended up making more money from my investing than I did in my day job. And I managed to get my taxable income down to zero. Because I had fantastic tax deductions and buying good properties. And I remember the HR lady at the government department I work said, Rich, don't mind me asking, but how do you reduce your tax? How do you buy these properties? So let me show you. And bingo moment, right? Light bulb moment. It was like, this is an opportunity for a business. That's kind of a little bit of my background and how it's evolved.
Was it like, what was the conversations had when like you walk into do you even chat into a real estate agent being like, you're a what?
Yeah.
Buyer's agent?
Absolutely. Back in the day when I first started a buyer's agency, it was such an education process. It was a real uphill battle. One, to get them to accept me and what we did. And they'd kind of go, oh, but the buyer's going to pay double commission. And why should they pay you? And I'm kind of almost anti. Others went, oh, great, I've got a professional to work with. This will make it easy.
Yeah.
And for the clients, it was a tough journey. It was really tough to educate the public because it just wasn't a thing back then in the day. So, yeah, long process.
Yeah, well, okay. And so I obviously love the fact that you were one of the OGs, one of the originals in the space, and obviously you've seen how the space has taken off since.
Yes.
And well, obviously you're coming to us with a wealth of experience, maybe even overqualified with the double degree economics.
You can't be overqualified, mate. You got to get street experience as well as creds, right?
Well, that's it, right? And that's important. And we were just chatting about this off air, and with respect to the street experience and coming back to your very first experience, do you mind, I always like to ask the guests this, do you mind just giving us a little bit of insight in terms of the very first purchase that you made, if you can cast your mind back to the purchase price, the thought process, why did you do it? Do you still hold it? Did you sell it? What did you sell it for? If you still hold it, what would it be roughly worth today?
Great question. So, yeah, I've got to get the cogs going backwards a fair way. So, my wife and I got married in 1992. We rented. What we did, we actually went out to a couple of people. We did letterbox drops to try and find a cheap rental. We managed to get a cheap rental, rented for about 18 months, and then we managed to get a pre-approval to buy. So we bought in Pennant Hills. We paid $240,000 for a 1,000 square metre block of land.
1,000 square metres.
A block of land, an old classic 3-bedroom post-war home that needed a lot of work. Okay. Derelict, almost not derelict, but a really run-down kind of massive block of land, big backyard, awesome, full of trees, right? So we bought that. Actually, we rented it, and then we actually bought it off the owners originally because the elderly owner died, and we managed to buy it from her privately.
Okay.
So
Right. So you were renting it,
and
then you ended up buying
we ended
it
up
from...
renting it, and then we ended
okay.
up and we ended up buying it from. So that worked out really well because back in the day in Hornsby Council, you were able, that size block of land, you were actually able to subdivide.
Even then?
Yeah. So there was a new dual occupancy law.
Right.
It was a bit of conjecture at the time that came in. So I just saw the potential for it. I thought, wow, it's a 10-minute walk to the station and the shops.
Because what was the average block size?
Oh, about 800.
Okay.
So 7, 8. They're quite large out there. Yeah. So this was just a little bit bigger.
Yep.
And it's on a fairly busy road, though. That was the negative about it. So we bought the block, we renovated it, and then when the laws changed and we could subdivide in terms of a dual occupancy, we put in an application to subdivide it. Now, we didn't pick a very good project manager. We had a terrible experience picking a town planner who kind of dropped the ball. We had big issues with trees on the site, significant trees. Don't talk to me. I'll do a funny story to share with you, right? It's a great story for your listeners here. So we put in the application to Hornsby Council to subdivide, and we're going to build on the back. It took 526 days. These figures are embedded in seared into my memory. I can see that.
Right? That came out quicker than the year you remember which you purchased it.
Because it took so long to get the bloody thing approved. Now, we had to fight. We went to the council meeting, represented ourselves, got it all done. Anyway, Hornsby Council had put a moratorium, as in they'd banned dual occupancies, but they'd done it illegally. They actually hadn't lodged the correct whatever it was in the day back with the Department of Planning. So we were able to get it approved, which then meant we could physically subdivide and build on the back. So we literally got a free block of land to build on the back.
Beautiful.
Which basically gave us $100,000 of equity to play with. And now that was very significant for our whole trajectory in buying properties.
So what was the process with that? So you had your I presume that the post-war home on the front of the block?
So we renovated that, put a right of carriageway up the side, dividing fence, and we built on the back.
Where were you living?
So we lived in the front house. Yeah, we lived in the front house while the building was going on.
And then what happened with the back?
So
Did you sell that?
No, we sold the front house and moved into the back. So it was capital gains tax free.
Yep.
So this is the thing. It was a principal place of residence, subdivided. We were able to move in the back, capital gains tax free, and it was great. So we started having our first two kids there.
Lovely.
Great spot. Raised them just the first couple of years.
And busier road, you're now set back as well?
We're set back, so it's a little bit quieter. No break and enters or anything like that. So it was actually pretty good. So we had to build a big, OSD, on-site detention system underneath. So so look, that we really significantly lifted the value. Now, I did sell it. The reason we sold it, we ended up moving to the Northern Beaches. Okay. We sold it, I can't remember how many years later. Maybe it was 2001 for about $600K.
But it was basically free.
It was, so that's right. So it was like, we used a project build. I think it was Beechwood Homes back in the time, a classic 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car home.
Yep.
And then we actually bought, again, another big block of land, 1,000 square metre block of land on the Northern Beaches, which we live in today.
You didn't rinse and repeat and do the subdivision play?
No, we can't do the subdivision there. It's not big enough to do, but we did a knockdown rebuild about 10 years ago, and it's been fantastic.
And do you find that, again, in your experience working with hundreds, if not thousands of clients over this kind of couple of decades, do you find that first purchase is really pivotal?
Absolutely critical. So as I said, for me, it enabled us, that equity, it was like almost a gift. It was like a bit of a lottery win for us. It was like that equity was then launched us into the whole process of buying properties. So for me, being an economist, I was good with numbers, right? And when someone sat down with me, and I went to a bunch of courses and showed me, remember the PIA, Property Investment Analysis, with Jan Summers and her husband Ian? When someone went through the numbers, we in a spreadsheet, pretty much similar to what you do with Game Plan, wow, the light bulbs went on. I bought 3 properties in 1 year using that equity, right? So, and that for me was like a game changer. So I was off and running to the races. It was great for me. So yes, getting that first property. Now, a couple of things I had to overcome personally. Fear of debt. I would
Really?
analyse
You had a fear of debt?
Oh, yeah, back in the day I did, yeah.
Wow.
Because I'd paid our home loan down to like 70 grand or whatever it was back in the day. And so it was like, we think you're chatting, well, why are we going into more debt? And I have this conversation with new clients
all the
today.
time.
Same thing today. I say,
yeah.
look, I can relate to where you're at, but it's about safe leverage. So I had to overcome that fear. I had a bit of paralysis analysis, analyse things to 4 decimal places.
Yep.
But once I overcome that, once I understood leverage, especially how finance works, like in building a portfolio, half the issue is getting the funding and the other half of the issue is getting the property.
Yep.
And some people just focus on the property without the funding.
Yep.
You've got to get them married up equally. It's very important.
Well, if you don't sort the funding piece out, don't worry about
You can't go shopping, right?
Yeah. And so with your investors, have you had anyone come to you with a horror story in terms of the first asset or an asset that they have in the portfolio?
Yeah, I've seen plenty of people come to us, not through our advice, but of their own, on their DIY approach, and bought in really dud areas. They might have bought, for example, in far-flung regional towns like Longreach or Roma or, far-flung
Why?
country. Well, who knows, off a whim. Might have read something in SPI magazine or something back in the day that was kind of giving pretty frivolous advice, or heard a tip from someone, buy in there because the mining town's going to go up and gone nowhere. Or they've bought an off-the-plan property. You remember Brisbane was a bit oversupplied for a period of time, people buying units there. They did nothing for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so if you buy in an oversupplied area, you basically got a massive opportunity cost, because you want to see your equity increasing 7 to 8 to 10% every year, and then get that compounding growth. And if you don't get that on your first property, it can set you back many, many years. Yeah,
absolutely. And so with respect to those individuals there, had they come and was there decision to potentially liquidate the asset?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, just the other day I was doing a portfolio review for a fairly high net worth client, doctor client, got 10 properties, real eclectic mix of properties.
Yep.
She'd got mostly units, and we went through it in detail. We looked at future projections, looked at all the cash flows, and we said, you need to sell those 2 there, and that'll free our equity to buy your next one.
Yep.
So there's a point at which you've got to rationalise the dud properties, the non-performers, and move them on.
And just get rid of them, right?
Absolutely.
Because it comes down to that opportunity cost piece that you mentioned. You just touched on something there. Are you, obviously pro residential, nice big blocks of land, but are you definitely against all other types of property? So like, for example, townhouses or apartments or anything like that?
No, I own apartments and townhouses myself.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And fundamentally, what forms part of that decision-making process with respect to, I'm going to buy this property versus that?
It's, I guess, a number of things. It depends where you're at on your journey. So I've got this philosophy of every property I buy has got to get me closer to my goal. What is my goal? And I won't articulate exactly, but let's say it's to get 300K worth of passive income. So does this property help me to get to that goal, or is it going to slow me down getting to that problem? So it might be I buy a house. It might be I buy a dual living property. It might be I do a house and granny flat. It could be I buy a townhouse.
Okay.
Right? So it just depends. I guess what I prefer to buy, my preference is always to buy freestanding houses, because I've always found the land content in a property is the thing that drives the capital value the fastest.
Yep.
Now, as you get older and you're more mature in your portfolio building, you're going to be going for more of a yield play. So again, at different stages of your property journey, it's not a one size fits all. So what you might buy now, Joey, at your age and stage is different to what I might buy at my age and stage.
Yep.
So a lot of people listening to this podcast have got to realise that you've got to get independent and good advice around what's going to work for you in your situation, what's affordable right now.
Yeah, because it's going to be so personal to the individual, right? And we were just chatting off air as well, and you were kind of mentioning that there is this Rich/property buyer philosophy in terms of the framework when constructing a property portfolio, with the whole purpose of trying to get us to that end goal. So what is the property game plan? What are we doing this for? Do you mind just touching on what those kind of foundations were?
Sure. So for me, I reckon there's 3 stages. Think of it as a triangle. Okay. So the initial stage for me, you want to be building a really solid asset base and recycle the equity. So it's a rinse and repeat strategy. So critical you get a property that's got growth. Equally, you've still got to look at the yield, right? The yield's important. It's not insignificant, but for me, the capital growth is more important.
The primary driver.
It's the primary driver. Some people kind of go, it's got to be positive cash flow from day one. And I go, well, it's a bit like a baby. It can't feed itself. You've got to feed it. It might be negatively geared for a couple of years.
Fabulous analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. You feed it, and then it's going to get more mature, and then it'll run around and cause you pain. But no,
and then it'll start looking after itself.
Exactly, look after itself and run away.
And then bring you joy maybe one day.
So no, that early phase, that first phase is capital growth. Okay, And then it's more building a balanced portfolio. And then the last stage is what I call rebalancing.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is you're going through the first two phases are accumulation. You're typically not trading properties. You're buying and accumulating properties.
Is there a window or it's...
Again, could be 10 to 15 years for that accumulation.
Yep.
It depends on your
individual.
income. It depends how fast you... And again, your borrowing capacity is the critical thing, right? One tip for your listeners, protect your borrowing capacity. It's the golden goose that lays the golden egg every year to enable you to buy. Yeah. So back to the stages, it's growth phase, it's then balance phase, and the last phase is what I call rebalancing. So depending on when you want to slow down from work, if you want to slow down from work, if you want to retire, at that point, it's, for me, it's quite good to sell a couple of properties. So let's say you've got 10 properties in your portfolio, and you might be spitting off 150K, 200K worth of cash flow, positive cash flow after everything, right?
Yep.
But you go, well, I've still got a fair bit of exposure. I might sell 2 of those properties or 3, pay down the debt, and then really boost your yield. So you wouldn't sell all 3 in 1 year because the capital gains tax is too high, but you might sell that over a period of years. So, and then you might even consider, you know what, I'm going to flick 5 properties and buy 1 big commercial or 2 commercial properties.
Nice. And why would I do that?
So why do you do that? It's purely from a couple of reasons. One is management, okay? So when you've got 10 properties, 10 property managers, it is a bit of a pain, right? No doubt about it. With 1 commercial asset, you've got 1 asset manager and you get a net return.
Nice.
So commercial is another whole ball game that you've got to get skilled with. I don't recommend people go into it straight off the bat. Again, there's a lot of risk factors we can unpack in a whole other podcast later on in this podcast, right? But I think getting a rebalancing perspective and getting high yield properties, and it could be rooming houses, right? It could be multi-dwelling or co-living properties that can also deliver the same kind of returns as what a commercial does.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And but we generally save that towards the back end of this kind of
portfolio.
The
portfolio building process. Yeah, and I think another point I make is people can get really impatient building portfolios, right? They want to, sack the boss, get out of there, and but the problem is if you sack the boss, you haven't got an income, right? Then you've got to be your own boss, right? And are you do you like working for yourself?
Yes.
Right? Everything lands on your lap, right?
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons, but I just say to investors, be patient in building your portfolio. And some years the market's going to go crackers. Like at the moment, as we record this in 2025 going to 26, we're going to have a very strong growth market next year. So it's a once in a lifetime really opportunity. But there are some years where it really plateaus, right? It might be because they've brought in some new APRA regulations or some new taxes or whatever. So bear in mind there are going to be periods of time when the market takes a bit of a breather, and you just got to ride it out.
How do you have that, how do you instill into your clients or even into yourself that kind of patience mindset? Because so many people just go, especially now with all this social media clickbait of buy 400 properties in 15 minutes and then you're going to retire in next week. How do you instill that patience of that get rich slow mindset?
Well, you can't. You just have to live it. It's kind of lived experience. It's like that person saying, I want patience, I want it now, right? You can't, we live in such an instant society. We're so distracted. We're always checking our phone every 15 milliseconds, right? We're always, why hasn't this person called me back? You've just got to allow the property market to do its thing, right? And just be patient and take a breather, I don't know.
Sometimes the best advice is to do nothing, right?
Exactly. Just sit still. I get people go, I should sell low. And just sit still. Just let the property do its thing. Yeah.
Go and enjoy your life. You don't have to worry about this all that much.
And some people panic, right? They'll read a headline, vacancy rate's gone up 0.5%. So what? Market dropped 5%.
Who cares?
So what? Interest rates going up. Taxes. It's all just life, right? Just, kick back a bit.
Deal with it. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
What about the whole philosophy at the moment, and it's starting to get a little bit more traction right now, and I'm sure you would have seen this within your own business as well, but a mindset shift away from, particularly the younger individuals, away from owner-occupier, aspiration towards owning your own occupier and
first
going, or even at all potentially, but and throwing out this whole rent vesting model. So if I was to ask you the question, would you, and I know yours is a different story, but for a younger investor, would you say buy the principal place of residence first, buy it later? And are you seeing within your business that people are going, I don't even care about buying my own rock at all?
Really great question. And my mindset has changed on this question too over time. So let me answer this question. I guess it comes down again to the individual situation. So if buying a home is going to tie up too much of your cash flow and too much of your equity, and you can't afford to get into the market full stop at the price point you want, then RentVest, a great strategy. And we're helping lots of our investors do the RentVest strategy. Some are buying 3, 4, 5 properties in order to buy back into Sydney at a later point.
Yes. Yep.
And that's a great strategy. Highly recommend it. It's a bit like, back in the day, I was told, go to uni, study hard, get a degree, and then you'll get a job, right? And same thing. People used to say, make sure you buy your first property and then you'll be right.
And you'll be fine, yeah.
And that philosophy's changed for me. So buying your first home is not always a smart strategy. I think whether you buy your home or whether you buy an investment property is a great idea, though, either way, because firstly, it teaches you financial discipline.
Discipline, exactly, yes.
And it's like the vacuum theory. If you don't spend your money on a property, you're probably going to spend it on a holiday, on a jet ski, a motorbike, whatever else you can imagine, right? So, yeah, I guess coming back to the idea of home or investment first, again, totally depends on your personal goals. Some people want to live in a certain area because their family connections are there or they've got a history of that area. So that could be a really good reason to buy there. And again, it's going to help them to get themselves their equity built for that area. Other people know it's not going to work. They're better off to just buy in another regional area or another city and get that equity and then buy back into Sydney or Melbourne or wherever at a later stage.
One thing that you just mentioned there in terms of like that vacuum theory as well, right? So I have this like philosophy of, for example, because you mentioned, right, that borrowing capacity being a finite resource, right? So for example, if I said to you, hey, you can go out there and buy, well, you've got a borrowing cap of 1.3 mil. If you were going to go and buy an owner-occupier, you're probably going to go and try and spend 1.5 on it. Whereas if you had the investment lens, you might cut that up into potentially 2 acquisitions.
Yes.
And I would rather go out there and make those investment purchases such that in 10, 15 years' time when you needed that owner-occupier, if you still want that at that point, you've now got a couple of assets that have grown that you can potentially decide to liquidate 1 or 2 like your client is trying to do at the moment, acquire and then get back into the market. And also, you're prioritizing your investment journey, and then when it comes time for that owner-occupier, you're probably going to be playing with a little bit more of a modest budget, and you're not necessarily going to be pushing yourself beyond the end extreme because you have these other babies here that you need to try and nurse within your portfolio as well.
Other point I'd make is that renting, there's not such a stigma attached to renting.
Anymore, right?
Yeah. It's a really smart strategy. Like, I know some people that rent some really high value properties that would probably yield 1 or 2%.
Yes.
But they get to live in Mossman or Vaucluse in a beautiful home because they can rent it for so much cheaper. And yet they've got a great portfolio of properties.
I had the classic story with this a couple of months ago with a client looking to buy, and they live not far from where I am, and a property sold around the corner from them for $4 million. And they're renting next door, similar brick home, for $1,200 a week.
Yes. And
the repayment analysis on an 80% LVR, assuming they had the $1 million, 20% deposit plus purchasing costs, which they didn't have $1 million to put down as the deposit. But even the repayments on the 80% LVR were like $17,000 a month. Whereas they could rent the thing for $4,500, $5,000.
Yeah,
it was more than a 3x multiplier.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, look at that difference in cash flow.
Massive. I mean, if you lived in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, I don't want to discredit any listeners, but if you lived in more affordable areas where your home genuinely costs you $400,000. Okay, maybe it makes less sense.
Because there's an opportunity cost. All that cash flow is preventing you from then buying properties down the track. So the sooner you can then recycle the equity in your home or an investment property to buy your second, third, fourth properties, you're going to be on the journey a lot faster. It's that, holding back and buying a too bigger owner-occupied property, have a too big a debt that can really hold people back.
And the other kind of thing as well with that is you've got X amount of borrowing capacity and you go out there and you buy, let's say, for example, you lived in Sydney, you had your 1.3, you go and buy a 1 or 2 bedroom unit, and all of a sudden, once your first kid comes along, it's no longer big enough for you anymore. Exactly. And then you're like future-proofing yourself, right? Instead, go out there and buy some assets that are going to grow in the market for you, and then you can go and buy the right asset for you at the right time.
Correct,
rather than necessarily just jumping in and going all gun-hoing on something in particular.
We appreciate you tuning in to the Property Buyer Podcast, and I hope that you're finding our expert interviews helpful. So that we can keep providing this information and growing our audience, we rely on word-of-mouth recommendations. If you found this information useful, could I please ask you to share this podcast with your friends, family and colleagues, and ask them to subscribe to the Property Buyer Podcast. It would be a big help, and we'd be very grateful for your support. Thanks once again for sharing the links, and now let's get back to the podcast.
You mentioned something there in and around the equity piece that I just wanted to double down on. So obviously no financial advice, but what does Rich do in this instance where he's got equity, but he's also got cash for an investment purchase. What are you putting down as your deposit? Equity or cash?
I generally I use as little cash as possible.
Okay.
So if I've got any cash and I've got a principal place of debt, owner-occupied place, I want to use my cash to pay down my owner-occupied debt as fast as possible.
Yep.
So maybe this strategy is, I'll just tell you what I actually did, right? So as I'm building my portfolio, I would pay LMI. So I would probably go to 90% LVR. This is just what I would do. I'm not advocating everybody do this. But for when I'm in that early first rung of the triangle phase, I'm trying to buy as many assets as quickly as possible. So I would pay the extra 1 or 2% LMI in order to have split up that cash deposit of 20% into two 10% chunks.
Yes.
So then if I can get the loan on the rest of the other 90%, right?
Yep.
So that was my approach. And it was like, okay, the extra 2%, I can capitalize that, amortize it over 5 years. Much better strategy. So that's how I was able to buy 3 properties in my first year.
Wonderful. Okay. And even if you didn't have that owner occupier, would you still use equity if you had it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I put the cash in offset.
Yes, of course.
I just put the cash in offset,
yeah.
ready for the next opportunity, ready for when I can buy.
Just keeps you that little bit more liquid,
keep a
right?
bit more liquid. Always keep a buffer.
Yeah.
Right. Always keep a buffer. Because I've had times in my life where things haven't gone as well as I expected, and you just got to have a buffer.
What do you roll with? Like a X month worth of expenses?
6 months. Six
Okay.
months. Yeah.
And as long as you've got that, you're okay, and then you can run your maths on the next acquisition. Cool. And so if we're kind of coming back to that triangle that we were talking about, so we've gone through our kind of the bottom of the triangle there. Talk to me about that middle rung before we get to the rebalance.
So critical point in there is you can't buy infinite numbers of negatively geared property. You're going to run out of borrowing capacity sooner than later.
Or cash.
Exactly. One of the two, right?
Yep.
Always cash strapped. So this is where you want to get smart. I mean, if you can buy high yielding properties and high growth properties from day one, fantastic.
Right.
It's utopia, right?
Yeah.
They're hard to find.
We're all looking for that.
We're all looking for that one, right? But there's ways to manufacture that, and I can give you some tips on that.
Beautiful.
Shortly.
Let's go for it.
So in that initial early phase, that middle phase, it's about getting the right balance of growth and yield. And there's different cities or produced at different locations, different property types. So what are some strategies? I know this next question, what are the strategies?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Get there, right? So a couple of things I've done personally. I've done a few granny flats. So I bought houses and added granny flat. So I did one on the Central Coast a couple of years ago, bought it off market for, what I pay, $950 for the block of land, 750 square metre block.
House on there already?
Yeah, house on there already. 4-bedroom house. I did a reno on that. Spent $30,000 just painting and
tidy up,
bits it up. Got rid of so much crap in the backyard. It was unbelievable. It was during summer. I did half of it. I quite like renovating.
I
just kind of like getting my hands a bit dirty. Your wife came and helped me. Anyway, we did a bit of that, and then we put a granny flat on the back.
Well, that cost you
200 and what's the number? About 235.
Okay.
So my little.
How big is it?
It's 94 square meters.
That's huge.
Yeah, so you're going to say, Rich, how'd you get 94? Can't you build them only 60?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So here's the trick, right? Under roof, you can have 94 square. So the habitable space is 60 square meters, right? Doesn't include the garage and then doesn't include the patio areas.
Okay.
So what I did, we used a private certifier to get it all done. After handover, I converted the garage to a 3rd bedroom.
Gotcha.
So I built an ensuite at the back of the garage, which was called dog grooming on the plan, right? And then
does this still have a roller door?
Yeah.
This garage?
So the garage got a 1.5 metre storage space.
Nice, beautiful.
Put a surfboard and bikes or whatever you want there.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's a garage, roll it up, and it's just storage space, right? So instead of getting, $450 a week rent, I get $620 a week rent.
Wow.
So on that, the total yield on the house and the flat is 6.5%.
6.5% from a resi asset.
Yeah. Yep. And it's going up even more as the rents go up.
So just come back to your numbers there. You spent two what?
So 235
to get, and then add your
950 for the house.
No, add your addition to the granny, because when you came to add the additional bedroom, or is 235 that all?
That's all inclusive.
So 235 spend to get 600 and what per week?
20.
Where can you buy a property for 230 grand and get?
You can't do that
in that location.
So that's what I'm saying. You're manufacturing the growth.
That is beautiful.
So that's what I'm saying. People say, granny flats are no good. Well, they're not. They're great if you can buy them in the right area.
But were you doing that for a capital growth play?
Both.
Okay.
Both long term, but more yield as well.
More yield. Yeah. So that's one. What else do you have for me strategy wise in the Rich playbook?
A couple of other ones. One thing I'm doing at the moment, I'm actually looking to buy a rooming house. So in Brisbane, you can do rooming houses. The legislation provides for that. There's a few challenges with the legislation, but I haven't bought one yet. But I'm in the process of buying one. What else have I done? What
does that look like? So I hear it thrown around all the time. This rooming house concept.
It's a 5-bedroom house with one common kitchen.
Single story. story, double story, can be either.
Could be either.
Yep.
Can be either. So each person rents their room separately.
Yep.
It's all done by a property manager. Each place has its own. Each tenant has its own living space, an own bedroom, and kitchenette and bathroom. So you're not sharing any facilities. The only facilities that are shared is the laundry space, where you've got room for like 3 washing machines and 3 dryers, and there is a common kitchen as well with a full oven and facilities if you want to cook up a big roast or whatever, right? So these rooming houses, they probably about 220 to 250 square metres internal. They can be larger, generally fully furnished, and they're all just rented out, and they give a really good yield. So
who rents them? Can anyone? The limitations?
Anyone can rent them.
You and I could rent them?
Anyone can rent them.
So can a nurse, so can a student?
Absolutely, a doctor can rent them.
Right.
So yeah, there is a bit of an oversupply in certain pockets, like Acacia Ridge, for example,
Mm-hmm.
so you wouldn't buy one in there. Some of them look really daggy and really boring, and I've seen some really high, nice spec ones there.
What's the process / is there a process to convert that into a normal resi house if you needed to, or no?
No, they're a specific type of asset.
Okay,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to convert. It's just too expensive.
And is that, like, for example, are you buying and building that, or are you buying it built?
You're buying and building.
Buying and building.
There are very few available on the market because there's such good cash flow.
And then
typically, you can look. There might be a couple of investors looking to offload it,
but otherwise, why would you?
Exactly. Why would you sell a cash cow?
So it's delivering a heap of cash flow. Is there? I'm imagining there is growth in the asset with your land purchase plus build costs.
Upset, because it's almost like a commercial play.
Yeah.
Because you're buying it, when you actually look at the rents, you're actually almost getting an 8.5% gross yield. Right, they're phenomenal in the right areas. Yeah, so they're almost better than commercial in some ways. That's why I like them.
Yeah.
So that's the one I'm doing. What else have I done to get cash flow? I've actually done something recently where I've converted one of my townhouses into a short-term rental. Okay. So I did a small development in Brisbane, bought a big double block. I had a Queensland at the front. I built 2 townhouses at the back. And I was renting both out long-term. But I'm using a company called Made Comfy. We've got a partnership with them, and it's near a hospital, so it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car townhouse, and you got to do a really detailed assessment. So you can't do short-term rentals anywhere. Okay?
Yeah.
I just wrote my newsletter about holiday homes and why do they work, all that sort of thing. So again, same sort of research you've got to do. Short-term rentals only work in certain areas. So there's particularly clever algorithms. You can do the research, and this company does that for you. So was getting $51,000 a year long-term rental. I'm going to get about $75,000 a year on a short-term
after expenses.
Yes, after expenses.
Wow.
So even though I'm paying like a 20% management fee,
but you're still getting.
I'm still going to get a lot more.
Who's renting it short-term?
So it could be anyone. It could be locums, like doctors coming to hospital. It could be families visiting sick relatives. Could be construction workers coming into Brisbane. Could be anyone just wanting short-term accommodation. Now, in Brisbane, there's such a shortage of rental accommodation. Vacancy rate's like 0.9%.
The people are just taking
That's why it's there. So, I've taken my wife's a bit nervous about it. She goes, Rich, we haven't got any bookings. I'm going, well, we just got a whole booking for the whole of December, right?
Yeah. That'll cover 3 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're getting nightly rates about $400 a night.
Yeah, wow.
Okay? So it's fantastic as a cash flow play. So that's something else to boost your cash flow.
Yep.
So yes, you got to put in a furniture pack, which costs $30,000 to $35,000 because it's a big home. If you had a 2-bedroom unit, probably $25,000 for a furniture pack. So you got to have a bit of cash or equity to draw on to do these kind of strategies. It's not just snap your fingers and make cash flow. Yeah. As I said, you got to make the investment to get the cash flow. So that's what I'm saying. Having the buffers, getting refinances, drawing equity out can enable you to do these kind of things.
You mentioned the whole holiday home piece there. What's your take on that?
Great question. I got interviewed this morning on the media for this same question, actually. So a couple of things on holiday homes. I don't believe in buying holiday. This is just for me. Because I love variety. I like going to different places, right? Yeah. I can go and rent a holiday house on the sunny coast for like $1,500 a week, which is not even the cost of covering the rates for 1 week. I like variety. Now, holiday homes, my message is do your numbers. And in certain areas, they work, okay? So pockets of the Gold Coast, like Burleigh Heads or Southport or Broadbeach, they can work, right? Hunter Valley, where else? Mornington Peninsula, Esperance in WA. Certain areas can work with high demand and low supply for holidays. Now, it's going to be seasonal as well. Summer's got a peak, autumn and spring gets a peak, winter's a bit of a dead period. So you've got to manage your cash flow through those periods. All I can say is, check the vacancy rates, check your maintenance, all those things come into play. But well, my main message is don't go on holidays. People just go, oh, once, and go, oh, darling, wouldn't this be nice? If you just see you got 2 mojitos in your hand, let's just buy this. The kids would love it here every year, right? And then before
they're not going to want to come anymore.
And you just drop $1.5 million on an asset that's going to be a negative cash flow. Just be careful.
Okay. With respect to that kind of little scenario that you played out there, that's someone that we're seeing potentially looking at going, okay, what happens when someone's at that stage of life where they've amassed their portfolio, they've got their owner occupier perhaps, and now they've gone, okay, kids have flown the nest. What do I do with this big home? Do you see people kind of coming to you for, I'm potentially looking to downsize
absolutely.
my owner occ? What does that story look like?
Really good. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally in that stage now. My 2 boys got married and left home, and we're living in a thumping big house, but we love it, right? We've got no plans to move.
You're going to stay?
We're staying.
Yeah, beautiful.
We just love it.
But is it also like, is yours like nice and flat, and do you have like 15 stories, so it's not too,
2-story. It works.
You could definitely stay there?
For a lot of people it works.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they just want to move close to the beach. Again, it's a personal thing, right? But yes, we do help a lot of people in that upsize phase and also downsize phase. So you're talking really about the downsizer. Yeah, it's probably a good strategy for people that maybe don't have as much cash, because if you're over 55 and you sell a home you've been in and you've been living there for more than 10 years, you can put $330,000 each into your super fund. That's a huge bonus.
Massive, right?
That's $660,000 bingo from the sale of your home into a property. Now, the government's done this to try and free up the housing stock to get the younger generation and get trade. But it comes down to your personal preferences as well. So I would say, it can free up equity. Even our neighbours across the road recently just sold, and they've moved up to the beaches. They sold.
What are they buying? Are they buying like a townhouse, an apartment?
So simple numbers. They sold for about 3.7. They bought a $1.8 million apartment.
Beautiful.
Okay, so they've got plenty of money left over.
What are you doing with that?
Well, I don't know what the person doing, but people, again, you can invest in other assets. You got to keep
pay down debt in your investment portfolio.
Pay down debt if you have that. Maybe you do some shares or something, or you buy more properties. So I'd always be looking to accumulate more and do some more investing.
Of course.
I did think of one other playbook thing for you is what do you call it? Duplexes. Okay. That's another strategy we've done for clients. Is help them find land and build duplexes. You get the 2 rental incomes from the.
Are you buying vacant land? Are you buying land with a house on it?
Even existing duplexes. Like we just bought one the other week for a client with a self-managed super fund in Brisbane. Paid, I think it was about $1,050,000, and we're getting $950 a week rental.
Oh, it's already built.
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah, so it's perfect for a super fund, because with the super funds you have to buy a single contract. You can't buy land and then build. So for this particular investor, they're actually a mortgage broker, one of our mortgage broker friends, and really, really good buy for them.
So a way to get into that type of asset class where you wouldn't have been able to. It's
probably about a 4.7, 4.8% yield.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So we've obviously touched on a few of those kind of investment strategies, investment philosophies. We've kind of touched on some of the roadblocks, and we've hit the overarching strategy of yourself and your investor clients. And I know there's been plenty of golden nuggets along the way, but I always like to ask, is there something in particular, if you were to give a message to, say, for example, they don't even need to be a first-time investor, but someone who's maybe got 1 or 2 assets, as a way to give them some advice or even encouragement to continue building that portfolio out?
I think it's not talked about is kind of upskilling yourself. And I raised this on other podcasts I've done, is kind of, you might be earning $100,000 a year, 150, whatever it is you're earning, and it kind of, you get maxed out on your borrowing capacity. But for me, I was always investing in my own education. I was doing other courses. I did a property diploma. I've done a whole bunch of
back to courses. Overqualified again.
So I've done other courses. I've done development courses. So for me, I wanted to think, how can I be of more use to people to increase my income? And if you increase your income, you can increase your borrowing capacity. So that can accelerate your portfolio faster. Rather than just sitting back and go, oh, let's just wait for this to happen, I'm thinking proactively, how can I get smarter and use my brain to generate more income?
That's really, really powerful, right?
So for me, it's not just like, because people do get stuck on 1 or 2 properties and they've got to wait, maybe 3-4 years to buy the next one. So another strategy is you think creatively, and maybe the bank of mum and dad might lend you some money. Maybe someone you know really well is scared about investing, but might loan you money at a certain rate, and you do that. I've even heard of people back in the day getting credit cards, like 30, 40 grand off the credit card to buy as a deposit to buy their first property, right? And then repaying it as quickly as possible. So there's other creative ways. There's a lot of non-bank lenders. So my advice is talk to a couple of mortgage brokers. There's ones that are conservative and ones that are more creative in how they can help you get in the market.
Do you think it's really important that you're upfront with your what you want with the broker? Because I always have this conversation like the broker can't read your mind.
The other thing, if you've got a broker, be really upfront with them.
Yeah.
Like, don't sort of shop around heaps of brokers. They hate it. And I hate it. I hate being shopped around, right? But be upfront with what the goals are.
Yeah.
And listen, they might help you. So there's so many non-bank lenders out there willing to do deals. Like, I'm talking to private banks and premium bankers, and some of the rates and things they do it's fantastic. Like doctors, right? They get 95% LVR, no LMI.
Yeah,
it's awesome, right? So if you're in certain professions, even accountants get 90%, right? So there's lots of ways to get around.
And some people have this philosophy of, I can't go to, I don't know, name the lender, but like your second or third tier lender because I'm going to be stuck with them forever and a day. It's not the case, right?
No. That's right. So if you have to get a Peppers or Liberties loan, you do it for 1 or 2 years,
and
right?
And then you see later, go back to your
6.5 instead of your 5.5%, right?
Yeah.
And then you refi and go back, right? Yeah. It's no shame in that, right? It enables you to get in the market, right? If the market, let's say Sydney does 9% next year and you pay an extra 1% on your rate, who cares, right? Like it's still just numbers.
Yeah, lovely.
I see so many people getting hung up on interest rates, right? It's such a stumbling block for people. Oh, I want the cheapest rate. For me, I don't want the cheapest rate. I want the maximum borrowing power.
Or the highest valuation, for example, to pull equity out.
It's a mind shift around getting the cheapest rate to getting the maximising your portfolio.
I think I could say I was guilty as well. I went through a season of like a 0.04 more. Why would we be doing that? And the broker goes, well, you can borrow an extra 100 grand with lender A, or they're going to give you a valuation, which means you've got an extra $65,000 worth of equity that you could pull out. So it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah. The other conversation I have regularly with people on the phone on strategy chats is around, they come to me and say, my borrowing capacity is 800. Rich, I got 800 pre-appeal, but I only want to spend 600. And I go, why? Oh, well, I just want to be cautious, just want to be careful. And I go, why? I say, you can't really buy a property for 200K.
For 200, yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to then get that in the market, get exposure and get leverage? And I say, we can get you a better quality property, better location, and get you a better outcome. And they go, okay, maybe. So again, it's a mind shift. I think in all of this investing, it's a lot of mind games because we're kind of our own worst critic. We're so fearful of making mistakes and all that kind of thing.
But I suppose that's why it comes back to, even in that case that you just said there, so it comes back to like building out that overarching strategy. So you go, well, if you did have your 800K and then you spent 600 and you're left with 200, what are you going to go on? Maybe you can go and fund Rich's granny flat, but that'd be about it.
That's right.
Or at least if you nutted all that out and you go, okay, well, here's what I want to try and achieve. This is what's feasible based on the amount of cash and equity and whatnot that I'm going to have over these years here, and this is what my accumulation journey looks like. Because like we said, and coming back to that original thing we said, that unfortunately borrowing capacity is a finite resource. We want to make the most of what we have available, and that's the beautiful thing about speaking to someone like yourself when you're thinking about undertaking this journey and hopefully seeking that advice before you go out there and make some of these lemon acquisitions like unfortunately we've seen some of your past clients come to you with.
Exactly, yeah. So it's about getting the finance structure right, working with the right team. So I'd highly recommend people get a really good finance broker on their side, one they can trust and build a long-term relationship with. So every time you get your pay rise or your what do you call it, your GRIP certificate, your tax return, send it in. How are we going? Get your properties revalued. You need a good buyer's agent, right? Really savvy buyer's agent to work with you to help you build a game plan, build a structure and a portfolio, and go and find the properties. You need a great conveyancer, a great solicitor. You need a good quantity surveyor, do your tax deduction, do your tax reports. Great accountant to do your returns every year. And there's one more I've missed. Oh, good building inspector. Okay, make sure you've got someone that's going to inspect the properties and not let you make mistakes. And also a good valuer, right? So a lot of people don't understand how the trick with valuation and kind of making money from thin air, as I call it. So another tip for you, whenever I have a bank say I want to do a valuation, I do it for them. So what I do, I prepare my own appraisal on my property and I give it to the broker. And I say, look, can you just put me in touch with the valuer? And I say, look, Bob, Harry, Sally, whoever you are.
Here it is.
I've done the work. I know you're going to do your own, but look, I've saved you a bit of time. Here's all the comparable sales. I've got all the analysis in there. And you know what? 9 out of 10, they give me the number.
Comes back at that number. Yeah. Beautiful bit of guidance. And obviously things that just people aren't thinking about, right? And this comes with decades of experience within the space. And I even love just the 6 or so key players to have on your side, in your corner when you're going in and you're building out this property portfolio. So mate, for me, I've learnt an absolute wealth in this short conversation that we've had. I think that the listeners would have got a whole lot out of this as well. And obviously you kind of pointed out the foundations, the kind of the building blocks, and then that kind of rebalancing aspects in terms of building out that portfolio and then readjusting to suit your certain phase of life as you're kind of going and transitioning to retirement. But I've absolutely loved the key messages and key takeaways that you've given the listeners of the podcast, and personally just sitting down and having this conversation and letting all this soak in. Mate, for me, it's been an absolute privilege. I've absolutely loved it, and I hope that we can do this again very, very soon.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Real pleasure to chat with you. So, Joey, thanks so much for being on the Property Buyer Podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. I really hope your listeners and our listeners get some really good value, and thanks once again.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks again. Thanks again for listening to the Property Buyer Podcast. We'll be back with another edition very soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for being with us on another Property Buyer Podcast. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please click on the SpeakPipe link and we'll answer this during the next episode. If you're looking to buy a residential or commercial property in the near future and would like to get the added advantage of having a buyer's advocate on your side, then please reach out to my team today and send us your inquiry, and we'd be delighted to help. Please visit our website at propertybuyer.com.au, where you can stay updated with all my latest market updates, weekly blogs and live suburb profiles to help you make better property decisions. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next Property Buyer Podcast.